let's ask the next presenter, who will be Timo Liuska from Dell Technologies, and he'll be talking about the differences between SONiC Enterprise and the open source SONiC systems.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming over here. So yeah, I have a short presentation about the Dell Enterprise SONiC and what it is and how it compares to the open source SONiC. So are there anyone over here who doesn't know at all that what SONiC is? Few, yeah, that's really good to have some new faces as well. So you can go to the next slide. So I like to compare the SONiC evolution to the server OS evolution. So I was at the summer job like 25 years ago, and they were running an ERP system that was on top of SEO Unix, and they had the software running over there. And then I was in the summer job, I did the same thing on the Linux. And back then, like 25 years ago, nobody believed that you would be running the ERP systems in Linux because it was just open source, and that wasn't like reliable, and you would need to have some kind of commercial Unix to run it reliably. But now we have the Linuxes everywhere, and nobody is really talking about the commercial Unixes anymore. So, and that's exactly the same thing what we are having the transition with the SONiC operating system. So we started the journey about 7 years ago with SONiC. So Dell started the collaboration with Microsoft to open source the network operating system, instead of doing everybody exactly the same features and functionalities in their own closed source environments. And that has been really successful, and there have been a lot of different vendors and customers, etc., who have adopted this. And back in 2020, we started this Enterprise SONiC version, which means that we provide the enterprise-grade support, and we provide the training and that kind of things what you would expect to have from a networking operating system. Similarly, as in the Linux world, there are Red Hats and Ubuntus, etc., so that you can reliably run the operating system in your mission-critical network. And so, yeah, then you can move to the next one. So, why I believe and we believe that SONiC will be the operating system of the future is that because it allows you to do the collaboration on much better scale and much better level. And everybody has been talking like about the network automation in the past years, and that is now finally kicking off, and we've been waiting that to happen for so many years. But what the SONiC allows you to do is that because it is based on the open source software and it is based on the common source code, etc., then you can do your own orchestration and monitoring tools, and you can develop things like this telemetry things, etc., and whatever automation capabilities, you can utilize those GNMI interfaces that are the standard interfaces, and so that you are not stuck into the, for example, with the Dell skier forever, but when you are like after 3 years thinking about the next generation of your hardware, or if you need to like move to a totally new environment where your own vendor doesn't necessarily even have the hardware, then you can pick and choose the vendor for the hardware, and you can utilize these capabilities in the open source world. And there are, of course, commercial options for the orchestration tools as well. So we see that there's more and more companies coming in on this network orchestration layer. So there we have lots of different collaborations, for example, with the Dorado software and Beyond Edge and Octera networks and Metalsoft and Raxnet, etc. So there are lots of different network orchestration system providers that are really interested in this SONiC area as well. So if you are not interested in developing your own automation tools and orchestration tools based on the Ansible, for example, then you can pick and choose any of those commercial orchestration options, and those are then working in addition to the Dell gear. Then of course those are working with the third-party hardware as well, so that leaves you the flexibility. So yeah. So SONiC, the innovation of the industry is much better than the one vendor solution. So you can see that there are a whole lot of logos that are currently already running the SONiC operating system over there, and there are more and more different vendors coming into the equation, as well as the different kind of cloud service providers and smaller companies who are adopting SONiC. So we see that this has been really successful, and it saves so much life cycles, for example, on the software development side, that we are not everybody has to do their own version, like for example about the BGP stack or LLDP or whatever, but we just share this common code, and then we can innovate together, and then we can get all of the functionalities and features and benefits together. So, and then we can focus, for example, on these automation topics, etc., instead of focusing on those small software development tasks on the operating system. You can go to the next one. So what is then enterprise SONiC compared to the other SONiCs, like the open source SONiC, etc.? So in the enterprise SONiC, we have, of course, the global 24/7 support, and we have all of the documentation, and we have then the training and the hands-on labs and things like that. So similarly, as you would expect from any of the network operating system vendors, so that is to make your life easy, so that it looks the same as like any other network operating system, and you get the proper documentation and you get the proper support and everything. And then we have this open source variant if you are not that keen, and if you don't necessarily need to have the support from us, and if you'd rather read the source code by yourself, then you can go to GitHub and read the source code, and then you can act based on that, and you can do your own testing and validation for your own software images, etc. So the open source version is, of course, totally free, so it doesn't cost you anything, but then the validation of the software, etc., is up to you. So we give you this flexibility that, and majority of the features and functionalities what we are developing into this enterprise SONiC, then we are rolling those out also to the open source SONiC later on. So those are not like immediately pushed over to the open source SONiC, but after a while those will come over there. And the whole idea is, of course, over there that so that because we are sharing the code to the open source SONiC, then we can also pull in the data from the open source SONiC also to the enterprise SONiC. So if we wouldn't be committing the code, then there would be this growing gap coming between the open source and the enterprise version, and that wouldn't obviously scale. So this is the only way to how to make it really scalable. And the benefit of this is, of course, that then we can get to utilize also the features and functionalities what others are committing over to the SONiC. So we don't have to write all of the code by ourselves. Yeah, then you can go to the next one. This is a short example of the SONiC community contributions. So we are among the top 3 open source SONiC contributors at the moment, but as said, there are more and more vendors coming into the picture, and we see that, for example, NVIDIA has been now committing a whole lot, and NVIDIA has been doing this FRR, for example, etc. So it's not just doing by ourselves and with Microsoft, etc., but we see that there are more and more companies adopting this, and this seems to be a major interest to other network vendors as well. So this is just a small snapshot, and basically all of the new switch platforms what Dell is doing, we of course support the enterprise SONiC on those. So our focus in future is in SONiC. So currently we still have our own OS X operating system as an option, but we see that the trend is in future to focus just on the enterprise SONiC, because we believe that that is really the future for the whole networking industry. Yeah, you can go to next. Then a little bit about the open source SONiC compared to the enterprise SONiC. So I put myself a little bit of information that how does the open source SONiC look like. So this is based on the information what is available in the GitHub, etc. on the SONiC web pages. So the open source SONiC has this Python-based SONiC CLI based on the Python click library, and that interface supports then, for example, creating the VLANs and assigning IP addresses, etc. But you cannot do all of the configurations in this click interface. So then there is the FRR, which has its own CLI with the VTY SH command, and you can launch that to do the configuration command. So if you are familiar with the FRR, so this works exactly the same as if you be running it, for example, on a server. Then there is in the /etc/sonic directory this config_dp.json file, which has all of the information of the configuration in this config dp, except for this FRR configuration part, which is then stored separately by the FRR itself. So it then has the separate configuration in this /etc/sonic folder. Then you can go. And then the open source SONiC supports also the standard YANG models, the OpenConfig, IETF, and IEEE, and then the SONiC custom YANG models. And these are then the node interfaces are the CLI, which is based on the CLIS, and then the GNMI server and REST server, and then the open source SONiC does the config validation with the YANG models. The management framework is running in its own container named SONiC Management Framework. So there are similarly own containers for the other functionalities, like for the routing and that kind of things. Those are running in their own containers. Then how does the Dell Enterprise SONiC work? So in the Dell Enterprise SONiC, we have replaced this management framework with our own management framework, CLI. And this makes it possible for us to do this more traditional looking networking operating system, because then we are in control of the CLI, how it looks like, and then we can do our own documentation, for example, that what are the different commands and how does each and every piece in the SONiC work like, and then we can do the trainings and that kind of thing. So this is the secret ingredient what we are doing in the enterprise SONiC. So under the hood we are running the same stuff as in the open source SONiC and just doing validation on there, but then in the management framework is totally its own. And the difference to the open source SONiC is that we have all of the relevant functionalities included in the CLI. So for example, this routing configurations, etc. So you don't need to move separately to the FRR. We are still doing the routing with the FRR, but we are just not configuring it through the VTY SH, but we are configuring it through our own CLI. And then we have, of course, the REST interfaces and the GNMI interfaces and GNOI and OpenConfig, and we have the documentations for all of those available. And then we are still running the config dp.json similarly as in the open source SONiC, but the difference over here is that we also include, for example, the FRR configs in this config dp.json. And you can use this config dp.json, for example, to back up and to restore the configs of your operating system, but we are not giving like any kind of support that. Yeah, go ahead.
So where do you store the SSH keys for the switches?
That is stored with in the traditional SSH directory. So it's.
So it won't be in the open source model nor in the FRR configs. It's a third thing which is not in the config db.json.
Yeah, because the SSH is more easier because people have been used to store the keys, etc. Similar, because we are running the open SSH, so that wouldn't make sense to try to reinvent the wheel and have our own.
I mean host keys, not user keys. Okay.
Yeah. So we use the open SSH over there. Yeah, there are exemptions that those are not stored separately or in the config dp.json, because those are the kind of things that you would typically have. You have a common infrastructure for your SSH keys, etc. So it's better to utilize the same capabilities, because if we would invent our own way of doing it, then you would have to write your own plugin or whatever when you need to automate and to do that kind of things. So yeah, I was talking about this config dp.json, so you can still copy and utilize the config dp.json, but if you are modifying it by yourself, then we don't give any kind of support over there that if you are screwing up something in the config dp.json. So you can utilize, and I have heard that some people are hacking this config dp.json by their own, but the recommendation on our side is to use the like the Ansible and the CLI, all these GNMIs and OpenConfig and the other standard interfaces. So that's to keep it in a more robust way of configuring things, because if you are hacking there something, then we don't know what is happening. Then Ansible, a little bit of the differences what are between the open source and enterprise SONiC. So in the open source SONiC, there is the community.sonic Ansible collection. So I checked a few weeks ago when I was doing these slides that what is the status of each of these functionalities in the GitHub repo at the moment. So in this open source SONiC Ansible module, there seems to be currently only the VLAN and interface config, so that's not really comprehensive in that sense, that there are limited number of features and functionalities. And then this routing stack, for example, then this Ansible is handled in the FRR's own Ansible collection, and the link is over there. And that seems to be quite actively maintained. So the latest commit a few weeks ago was done in August of 2024. So there are some modifications going on, and it seems to be relatively up to date. And then we have this Dell Enterprise SONiC, which utilizes this Dell EMC Enterprise SONiC collection. And there are like about weekly updates coming out to this Enterprise SONiC collections, and that contains all of the important NOS functionalities, and there are whole lots of features, etc., what you can utilize over there. So the idea is that we are keeping it up to date, and whatever configs you need to do over there, then we make sure that you can utilize these Ansible collections to do those things. So few takeaways then on this enterprise SONiC. So what we do on the Dell on this SONiC is that we do the validation for these partner ecosystems, so that you can utilize the third-party orchestration systems in your network to make the automation happen easily. And then we provide the interfaces for your own automation. If you want to use like Ansible or GNMI, etc., then we have the libraries and tools over there. And then of course we do our own switches, so you can get the power switches and the support for the hardware as well as for the software. So it doesn't matter whether the issue is on the switch hardware or on the SONiC operating system, then you can always call us, and we will sort it out, and we will test and validate all of those functionalities and use cases. Was that the last one?
Yeah, at least it seems to be.
Yeah. Any questions?
Are you going to go be in the sauna?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, you can grab me and ask any kind of difficult questions. So later on, if you come out. And you can also get the SONiC image from web, the GNS3 image. I think it might require registration to the Dell.com website or something, but it is available over there, so that's also.
Is it also already available on Container Labs?
Yeah, it supports Container Labs, thanks to Nokia. So Roman from Nokia was developing the support for the Container Lab. So yeah, I heard that it works. And Timo Räsänen, I think, was playing around with it, and he was able to get it working. So yeah, it should be working.